was going to say good afternoon, but it's pretty much good evening now. So I just want to say thanks to Mark for having a fantastic day, Kelly and the parents. Okay, it's going to get quite emotional now, so I'll get the Kleenex out. When Mark first asked me to be his best man, I was told by lots of people there was a nerve-wracking experience that I felt physically sick of my eyes ahead. But then I thought, well, at least I won't be the only one. I mean, after all, Kelly will be just starting to realise she's actually married Mark. And I just say that the guests look absolutely wonderful. On the subject of guests, in the run-up to today, Mark and Kelly had a little bit of an issue on the seating plan. Okay, and they couldn't decide where to put people. So being best man, obviously I had to step in and interfere and help out. So we finally decided to use a wedding present list as a guide. We bought the biggest presents and the smallest ones at the back. So Dave and Nicola, you think it's not quite up and up. I'll start my speech by telling you that I've known Mark for around 6 years. I first met Mark when we started working together at Ascot as managers, and we were still on a training course in Wembley. Can you remember? As I was talking to Mark on our induction, I remember thinking that he seemed a very friendly sort of person. He was very outgoing, very chatty, very talkative, very happy with himself, having a laugh, having a joke, and he always had a massive big smile on his face. Of course, I would soon discover this was all down to alcohol. Mark and I had lots of memorable moments when we worked together at Ascot, though one particular thing stands out. I'll never forget when we were driving us both to Ascot House in Leeds for an award ceremony, and Mark insisted I use fifth gear all the time and really put my foot down to get there and drive fast because we were dying for a McDonald's. And I'll never forget him saying that, because shortly after I was stopped by the police for speeding, fined £250 and given 6 penalty points on my licence. Thank you, Mark Lane. And I'm still paying for my insurance premium. It was whilst we were working together at Asda after 3 years that I started to consider leaving the company. I asked Mark what he thought I should do. And Mark was good enough to sit down with me, go through my options and convince me to make the leap and leave Asda, telling me it was the best thing to do and I offered a great job to Staples. So on his advice I did. And imagine my surprise when just 2 weeks later I discovered that Mark had applied for my job and got it! But I'm just sure that was some sort of coincidence. I don't know any grudges. After working for several years, Mark then left himself and moved into his current line of work, which is working for an oil and lubricant supplier, SFR. Very reasonable prices. And he's working for his father-in-law, Gary. And I have to be totally honest with you, I don't actually understand what Mark is supposed to do in his job, and I don't think Gary knows what he does either. I did talk to Mark whilst writing my speech. After talking to him, I don't know, I now actually don't understand that Mark doesn't understand what he does either. I've got a little thing to give to Gary for the office. Due to increased competition, cost escalation and our keen desire to stay in business, management has deemed necessary to change your terms of employment. It is now compulsory to do something called work in between lunch breaks, coffee breaks, tea breaks and toilet breaks. Management intends to call this a work break. I must admit, whatever Mark does do, he's very good at it. And he's a very hard worker. He's very critical of himself, as a lot of his probably family know, and he's always analysing things to stay in control. Right now, for example, I mentioned Mark is analysing my speech in great detail and making mental notes about it so he can give me feedback later on. Although not as much as his parents will be though. Now, away from his work, your groom today has many hobbies and interests that fill his spare time, and one of them is cars. Mark loves his cars and he's totally in love with Jeremy Clarkson and everything to do with Top Gear. And owns not 1 or 2 or 3 but 4 cars himself, 2 which are vans. A Vauxhall Vectra, family days out. He's got a red coupe. And he's got 2 vans that he used for car boot sales. That does bring me on to one of Mark's other hobbies, which is trying to make his fortune through car boot sales. Mark and his good-looking cousin Andy, who shot me at paintball, can often be seen carload of absolute junk at a car boot. When he's not selling, he's buying absolute crap to go and put on eBay. Now, when Mark isn't trying to make his millions by selling other people's crap, Mark's also a keen DIY fan, as Gary touched on earlier. There's just some he's only got into recently though. I was going to tell you a short story about the time I pulled half of his kitchen ceiling down because he was in bed with his flat, but that's still quite painful. He's not going to leave that now. You can ask him afterwards. Despite this, Mark actually has been doing DIY for all of his life. He's very confident of doing work around the house. No DIY job is too big, and he's told me on several occasions he can do almost anything around the house with his eyes shut. And I must admit, I have to agree with that statement. I've seen some of his DIY work, what you've done, and I must admit, you've done that with bloody eyes shut. Barbecue shed, where's that now? But anyway, enough of Mark, let's move on to the moment that Mark first met this beautiful young lady, Kelly. It was obviously the very start of something special, that's why we're here today. The first time you met Kelly, I'm sure you all agree, one of the first things you pick up on is the fact she's an animal lover. Kelly loves all sorts of animals, especially horses, as we can see on the tables, and she'd be the first person to come to an aid of a poor, helpless creature, and that's why we're here today. This is on YouTube on Monday morning, by the way. Now, for those of you who don't know the story, Mark actually met Kelly through me. Kelly comes to work at my Asda store through the span of 5 years. And it was quite an interview when I first met her. We sat down, went through paying hours, and then Kelly left the store and she fainted down the baked bean aisle. Was cordoned off. Whilst the paramedics were called, Mark was called to go at the end of the aisle. I'd never heard someone moan so much. Seeing Kelly on the floor, his response, can't they cart her off to the warehouse? I have pallets of stocks put out. At the time, I'd given you odds of 1,000 to 1 that I'll be telling this story today. I knew Mark had a little soft spot for her when he kept trying to squeeze pallets of bananas down my other aisle when Kelly was working. I always... Over the weeks that Kelly started to work for us at Asda, I can tell Mark and Kelly will make a wonderful couple and together be perfectly suited to each other. I can tell this because Kelly was a very warm person, very caring, loving, very funny, attractive, had great prospects and a great personality, and Mark was, well, just single. It was a pleasure to watch Mark and Kelly's relationship develop over the years, it really has been. And when Kelly started training to be a nurse, we had some great nights out together at university. Thanks to Kelly, I know she carried me out on a few occasions. It was no surprise, after several years together, Mark went to visit Kelly's father, Gary, to ask his permission to marry Kelly. Kelly's father said he'd be delighted for Mark to propose, which just goes to show how little we knew about Mark at that point. But when Mark proposed to Kelly, several days later, I'm told it was a very romantic and emotional moment. After saying yes to Mark, apparently Kelly even had tears in her eyes, which is understandable. If I did agree to marry Mark, I think I'd want to cry too. Mark and Kelly's marriage today is really meant to be, and it's totally wonderful to finally see them as husband and wife. It's almost time for me to finish now. I know Mark's family has got a sweepstake and I'm really on time. Okay, and it's been a total honour to be Mark's best man today. He's like an absolute brother to me, and I love Mark and Kelly to absolute bits. It's been a great day so far, and I'm sure you will be in for a fantastic night, but let's remember, we're not here to simply enjoy ourselves. We are here to celebrate the marriage of Kelly and Mark, who earlier today married for better or for worse. Mark couldn't have done any better, and let's face it, Kelly couldn't have done any worse. So ladies and gentlemen, if you could please stand and raise your glasses to the new Mr. and Mrs. Lane, to Mark and Kelly.